Good.
Good, okay, good. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes from the previous meeting from June 2023?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. It looks like no one is here for the public agenda.
Not attached. Did you have attached? Yeah.
There's no one here for the public agenda. Let's move to the next section. We have the staff report from Lieutenant Moses.
Good afternoon, everybody. Captain Easter is on a well-earned vacation, so you guys get me tonight. Looking at the finalized complaints. So for the finalized complaints, we had a total of 11 external, 23 internal, for a total of 34. The finding types on the external, we had 4 exonerated, 14 unfounded, and then the totals on the internal complaints, they're 16 coaching and mentoring, 1 exonerated, 4 not sustained, 2 sustained with a suspension, and 3 sustained written reprimand. The majority of the complaints that were finalized this month appear to be insubordination. There were 14 of those. And then breaking it down by bureau, Patrol South had the most with 9. Everyone else was at 5 or 6, besides Central Bureau, who had 2. I'm not going to go over the race and gender of department members. I know you guys have indicated that you may want that taken off. We can talk about that with Keely to see if we want to take that off of this sheet you get every month and just do that quarterly. I think that was what you guys had spoken about with those specific breakdowns. And then you have the year-to-date on the back, with, again, the top 3 being insubordination, general duty responsibilities, and contact with citizens.
What are you talking about on the race? Or are we still on the bureaus and shifts?
I was talking about race and gender of department members. I know you guys had indicated that maybe that wasn't super useful for you every month,
Right.
because those numbers don't change that often, and looking at maybe just doing that quarterly. Does anybody have any questions on the graphs that I can try to answer? And if not, I am happy to get them back to Captain Easter to get you answers next month. And if not, then we can select any cases off the closed or finalized complaints or other lists that you guys have, if anybody has anything they'd like pulled.
.23 PSB 0740.
Okay.
Use of force case with a suspension.
Do we see any other cases that we'd like to review?
I assume everyone got the email from the gentleman that had an issue. I'm not sure whose month it is to be looking at those.
Okay, no.
I didn't get
There was a CA came out right at the, and I don't know that I put it in my packet. It came out about June 17, I think.
July 17th. This
July 7th, well, that was last month. But anyway, it was a complaint, but I couldn't tell whether or not it had been a PSP number on it.
Right, so I wasn't sure if we needed to reach out to him and find out what his intentions are, what he wanted, refer him to them. I mean, I'm happy to do that if no one else has.
Do you know what we're talking about?
No, I don't.
All right, there was it came to the CRB mailing list, email list.
Okay.
So I know I got it, Janet got it, I assumed all of us.
I received it.
Paul,
I don't think I got it.
anyway, it is,
I missed it.
It came from Winston Westwood.
right.
Yeah, I have it.
And so the question is whether, I mean, somebody could reach out to him, but the first question is there a PSB complaint on it, or should it be referred to a PSB investigation? That'd be the initial question.
What's the email about?
You want me to
I
read?
don't think I got it.
You want me to read it? I can.
Sure, read that.
Please do.
It comes from Winston Westwood email address, but it's from someone named Jabril Fisher. It says, I, Jabril Fisher, experienced a horrible deal of anti-Semitism, abuse, and defamation of character, discrimination from badge number 1844. He went out of his way to harass me while I was practicing my First Amendment rights on public property that I pay for with my tax dollars. I'm tired of explaining myself. Seriously educate yourself on the law. Your officer needs to learn how to protect and serve their community, but going after the one person who knows their right truly shows how cowardly your officers are. Going after a person with nothing to hide. Oh yeah, that just makes total sense when you have people stealing, killing right in front of your faces, literally right in front of your faces. What jokes to our society.
Did he request anything? He just sent the note to,
They just sent the email. They didn't request anything. It was more just kind of venting.
Well, it's hard to tell because he identifies a specific badge number. That's the only thing that made me wonder
the PSB.
if he was wanting something.
Well, did he send it to the police department too? Did anybody else get it? I mean,
It's just addressed to the CRB
and
mail address, and I think somebody, whoever's turn it is this month, should just reach out and suggest if he hasn't done an official complaint, then to kind of offer to help.
yeah, find out what,
And if he has got a
because no.
number, then
no.
we want to get that, if he wants us to, I mean.
That would seem appropriate to me.
Because police can't investigate it if they don't hear about it.
Right, that's true.
Whose month is it? Do we know?
No, I mean, have we assigned months in it?
I don't, last month, we did not assign somebody for.
Okay.
We have not assigned. Huh?
He said, no,
It's okay.
Well, I don't mind reaching out to him. I have no problem with that.
well, I didn't get it,
But you-
so I feel like,
If you would, reach out to
I'm
him.
happy to do that.
Any other cases that anyone would like to have pulled off of this month or previous reports?
22 PSB 6302.
I will check on that one. I had briefly discussed that with Captain Easter. I believe that entire investigation was completed by HR, so we may not have a PSB investigation to report, but I will check with Captain Easter on that one and we'll let you know.
Well, say that again?
I believe Human Resources completed that investigation independent of professional standards.
Okay.
I may be wrong.
PSB numbers.
It has a PSB number for our tracking purposes because the complaint was made, so we wanted to track the status of the complaint,
Right.
if it's the one I'm thinking of. But I'll mark it, I have it marked, and I'll talk with Captain Easter when he gets back to make sure of that, and then we will get with the law department to make sure that that's something that you guys can review.
Right, that's what we need to find out.
Yeah.
Is that something that we can review?
If HR did it, yes.
If it has a PSB number, isn't it fair game for us?
I don't know enough to answer that question, yes or no, so that's what, we'll check with the law department. Once we confirm that that's the one I think it is, we will check with the law department and make sure that it's fair game for you guys.
Okay, and here's another one, and I'm only picking it out because it has taken a year and a half to resolve. 22 PSB 0632.
I will mark that one as well. Any others?
I just want to point out again that this month there were 4 investigations for people that took leave when they didn't have it, which again, to me, is an indication that people aren't happy. to come to work?
If you'd like to pull one of those for review, you certainly can. I'm sure it may shed some more light on the facts and circumstances.
I'm not sure that pulling just one case would tell us anything. We probably should look at several months of what's going on there. And I understand generationally, things are different now than for us old folks. But it still causes me concern that maybe people aren't are not happy to come to work.
No, I get it. I get the concern.
So I don't know what to do about that, but
When they take leave, basically you're saying they're taking a vacation day and they don't have any.
Not even that. So on these, you wouldn't get necessarily this. That's part of it. But when these happen, so if someone puts in to take vacation time or sick time and they don't have it, payroll will deduct other amounts of time if they're available. But we have some employees that go into what we call without pay status, meaning they've taken everything, vacation, sick, comp, everything. And that's what these would be.
Okay.
Is that this employee has used all time that they have available to them, and they go into what we call without pay status.
And so we don't know why they took it. They could be sick.
Well, that would certainly be part of the investigation. The internal investigation would discover why they're doing it, if there's any reason for it, and that could certainly affect the outcome of the investigation, right? So if someone does the investigation, if the supervisor sits down with the employee and says, hey, what's going on here? And they say, well, I have this health condition that I didn't tell you about.
Oh,
And they perhaps the department would work with them to figure out, corrective action or something like that. Or you could have employees who say, I know I don't have time to take, but I chose to not come to work.
how many times can you do that and still keep your job?
Well, realistically, it's a B level offense. So you would have to look at our penalty grid, and you would look at a first offense B penalty, I believe, is a written reprimand up to 3 days off. Second offense, I believe, is 1 to 5 days off.
well, and as desperate as we are for staff, that's not something you'd want to be necessarily considering a fireable offense.
Well, that's why I say how many, if you have somebody that half the work days they're not there and they don't have a good reason, I think we better look at, maybe they don't want to be a cop anymore. So, that's why I ask is what, I want to know the reason. The numbers are all well and good, but I want to know what's behind those numbers. So that's,
Several of these, or in fact, the most of them are not officers or employees, so,
okay,
yeah.
Right, so that regulation would cover civilian employees as well.
I see, okay. Well, it still says something about the workplace environment.
It could.
I mean, it could, and
Not necessarily, but it could say
It
something
could,
about the workplace environment. I know, personally, I have investigated a case involving this type of behavior, and the indication was not that it was the workplace, just that the person,
just didn't want to come to work. Yeah, well, I often felt that way, but I don't know, I wanted to get paid.
Well, in individual circumstances, I'm just thinking of, it would take an awful lot for me to use up all the leave that I've accrued over 23 years, but the teacher across the hall from me took maternity leave and used all of hers up and had to go deficit because she didn't have enough. I mean, something like that can wipe out all your days.
And that's
It
why
could be a car accident, could be anything. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not
that's why
necessarily
I
an
asked-
environment type of a problem.
Yeah, what more is there? Because there's often more to the story than just they didn't show up,
right?
And
unfortunately, we can't get into those details in the summary.
Sure.
Yeah,
So,
so yeah.
So.
Yes, ma'am. Sure,
Is that what it is?
it is.
Okay, terrific, thanks. Okay, so I keep bringing it up, the race of the officer and the race of the complainant.
Yes.
But since you are in the unique position to, I don't know about implement, but document the Jensen Hughes recommendations, right? And I don't have it in front of me, I could pull it out, but I believe Jensen Hughes recommended that this CRB be provided way more of a narrative on
I
this.
believe their wording was more robust.
More robust, okay.
If I remember correctly.
All right, so when can we expect this more robust narrative on each one of the cases?
I believe this is a more robust version. I know that's hard to believe than what the CRB used to get, but we can certainly review. So the way this process works is Captain Easter actually looks at every single one of these,
Right,
and then kind of pulls it down to a publicly available summary. Because you have to remember, this is publicly available.
Yeah.
So that's part of why it can't be as detailed perhaps as what some people may want.
Right.
But I can have a discussion with him and certainly see if there's any way that they can provide even more detail. Because I understand the frustration that you don't feel like you have enough information to pull cases
No.
appropriately.
And I thought there was something in there that could be just the report with redacted information. Maybe not.
There's
Is
it states, direct the WPD to provide a detailed summary of the origin and nature of the complaint within the monthly spreadsheets of open and concluded complaint investigations, or a copy of the completed complaint form precipitating the investigation.
Okay.
So I thought maybe PD was just trying to figure out how to make that happen.
Well, I know that this form is quite the undertaking to create. But I will circle, when he's back from vacation, I will certainly circle back with him on that recommendation specifically and see where he's at with it.
I do note that this is, I mean, it's now very clear what's internal and what's not. That's good. I would suggest, at least initially, that Captain Easter adopt a two-sentence rule. If you just add another sentence to each one of these descriptions, you may have captured the additional information required in terms of the necessary detail.
Well, but perhaps, others on this board might not think two sentences, because the editor, has a different interest perhaps, nothing against him, but as the department's representative, the editor might be looking at things differently than members of the CRB would be.
Right. No, I understand that.
And so more robust, yeah, okay, so we decided those aren't the words.
So more detailed.
Yeah, it'd probably be acceptable to a majority of the board members.
Jay,
Yeah.
could you give us a hypothetical example of what you're looking for in a second sentence?
The internal investigation that I called for review on, 0740, an internal investigation involving officer use of force. The officer was alleged to have blank, 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 blank. That kind of provides a lot more detail. I'm concerned about, because this is, obviously a summary, and if the board is expecting to get a copy of the complaint or a redacted copy of the complaint, the information is going to be too voluminous, to manage probably. That's my concern. And it's just the practicalities, because normally we have 2.5 pages here. Sometimes we have 3 or 4 pages, and that would be a huge amount of data.
I'll pass along the request for the two-sentence change.
The
Or
second sentence isn't like what the second sentence is.
no, I
in some of
understand.
these.
It would be
It's
a more detailed version of
Yeah,
the use
adding
of
to,
force,
like
perhaps.
What Jay said there. Second sentence, the investigation found the allegation unfounded, and that's repeated like 4 different times. Like, we can read that in this other column.
Yeah.
Has
Not a
it
second.
has this changed over time, over the last couple of years? I'm just curious to know.
I think it
Has
has.
it
Reporting format?
Yeah.
Yes. Has it changed to the point where has it given more information?
We have had,
Yes.
It's improved.
we have gone like this. And we've had some versions that have come back with a lot more detail, and then we got skinny for a while. And so then the current version is better than a year ago probably. But we've had even more in terms of how elaborate the description was.
I'll talk with him when he comes back, because like I said, he's the one who creates this document. I mean, in concert with other people, but
Well, but then this kind of gets back more to the project you're working on, So the two sentences, it's like beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So I think, I mean, we just want to, you can hear that we want to see more.
Yeah,
We do.
absolutely.
Okay.
I think next turn, I think the next meeting, we're going to talk about the Jensen Hughes report, I believe. We'll talk about, diving into it a little bit more,
Okay.
so.
In August?
I think you need to be concerned. My concern is that some things are more serious than others. He didn't turn his camera on, and so they talked to him about that. Well, that's, what more do we need to know? I mean, he didn't turn his camera on, okay. But when you have use of force, I would like to know more about that use of force, even if it was unfounded and everything. Maybe just, I think you need more explanation than just use of force, because I think that is more important and more of a concern than that he didn't turn his camera on, or he. Some of that, or he put the thing in the computer wrong, the information, it wasn't quite right. Those are human errors every day that people do. But use of force, that's something else.
I think we've gotten to the point, though, where if use of force is cited in the complaint, we're going to review it.
Yeah.
We don't need a lot of details. I mean, that's
I don't think we
enough.
picked, then there's
Alert.
one here that we need to pick.
Well,
Right. Use of force.
maybe what we need to say is if it says use of force, we want to look at it.
Automatically?
I'm just saying. I just think it's more important than others. I'm just saying that not all of these need a paragraph, and others of them are,
I will,
So-
I'll get with him when he gets back and have the discussion about the request for more detailed information, if we can do that in a way that fits a public forum, which I think there's probably a way to do that. I don't want to come out over my skis here and commit him to something that
Makes sense.
he's not going to be able to do. So I have it written down right here to get with him about that, and I will do so.
And so you referenced, of course, and we've heard it many times, that it's time-consuming, and that's why part of the Jensen Hughes was to hire maybe an FTE that's not a department employee to pull some of this stuff together. Do you have a status on that?
My understanding is that would not be a police department employee, that would be a city manager's employee.
Right.
So no, I don't.
Okay. Well, but you're working on updating,
Yeah, so I'm working on it from mostly the police department's perspective.
Okay.
The tasks that were specific to us and specific to CRB are what I'm mostly focused on. They have a project manager through the city manager's office that also works on it. The dashboard.
right. Okay, but you said, it seems like I'm picking on you, and it's
I
not
welcome
the
it.
intent.
I welcome it.
Intent.
I am not uncomfortable yet.
Your part is the WPD and the CRB, but it was specific, I think, this employee was for CRB work, right? So it's pretty tightly related.
Yeah, I mean, the answer, I understand your perspective that you're providing, but the answer is the same. I don't have an update on the status of that employee.
Okay.
And I
Get it.
I can request an answer.
Okay.
I cannot guarantee that I will get one.
Okay, terrific.
Maybe we can ask.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm trying to imply, perhaps.
Well, if it doesn't happen quickly, it's not going to happen for another year.
Okay.
Because we're right now in,
Budget's in process, right?
yeah,
Is it in the budget?
I doubt it.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
Has any made the request? Because we've talked about this for several months.
Yeah.
I mean, this would be the time to implement, and to have information about these cases, we're going to have somebody from within the PD department to have access, I would think, to those files, right? You can't, the civilian.
So, yeah, I mean, if the civilian was creating this document, then yes, they would have to have access to some of this information, obviously.
But it would still be limited, but you know what I'm saying? So there's going to be still work.
Perhaps. I don't know the logistics of how that would work out. I really don't. But I can check on that recommendation through the city manager's office and see where they're at. I don't know today whether it's been approved, whether it's been added to the budget or not.
Because that's a part of the Jensen Hughes report. Provide dedicated
not-
funding to support the mission and administrative needs.
I do not disagree with you.
You know, the issue there, though, it doesn't have to be outside the police department funded position. It could be a police department funded. Correct.
Sure, sure.
And my thought process, which I could be completely wrong, is having the person be an employee of the department itself would mean that that employee would have better access and ability to
I agree.
get information as opposed to somebody who's outside the department.
Yeah, well, you know, because there's all that weird stuff about access to criminal records and.
Right. And
Yeah,
so that mean it seems to me that it'd be better that you have and maybe not even a full-time person, but, or if not full-time for CRB purposes, but at least a dedicated person who's responsible for some of this information given.
I agree.
Yeah.
I will check on it.
Scenario, WPD is still the gatekeeper. And so then that doesn't, in my view, provide, the total transparency as perhaps an outside person who isn't vested. Just for the record.
I appreciate all of the feedback.
So, as Mr. Chairman, would you entertain a motion to have us recommend to the city council that they have an item in the budget for this position? Seems to me that this is the time to act, otherwise it can be another year. We have an opportunity now to make that clear to them, I think, in the budget process for the city manager and the city council to make that happen.
I believe that this was discussed in the Jensen Hughes report, correct? Right. It is, and we have not had an opportunity to review that and come up with, okay, what are we going to do as a board? And so I think that it's important for us to make sure that we do that as a group. So I don't know if that motion would be needed right now. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it would have to come from, the budget is presented to the city council, but it's presented by department.
Yeah.
So if the police department, if this would be an employee, then the police department needs to put that in there as part of their requested budget. Because the council and county commission both, they have certain limits of what they can change and can't change as far as going up. And so I think that would need to come from the police department, and they would put that in as an item in their budget. And then that would go to the commission, and then they go from there. I mean, they hear all the departments and everything, but I'm just saying it's the police department that would need to do that, I would think. Maybe I'm wrong.
The city manager could do it. The city manager is the ultimate gatekeeper on the budget, I assume.
Yeah.
So it's, and then the council can do it too. They all have the ability to put it into play.
Come on,
Been
Paul.
out there since March, and we've discussed it ever since.
No.
I would hope that between now and August, when this is going to be approved, that something is done, that we actually act on some of this. Right now, without the dollars to back it up, it's just talk.
What do you think the thing to do would be, to talk to the police chief first about it?
Yeah. I mean, the city manager.
So,
Come on, Paul.
so a question I don't know the answer to on this, that, because it's in the Jensen Hughes report, we've reviewed individually, assume the city manager has, multiple other people, what negative could come of us making this motion? I mean, is the best case scenario, we get someone that is going to be able to do this. Worst case scenario, they just say no. But right now, the answer is no because we haven't asked.
Good point.
And we could just make a motion to say that the CRB supports recommendation 6.6 on page 72. It doesn't have to be.
I haven't looked at the budget. I don't, it may already be in there. I don't know. But if we don't ask, it's on us then. If we don't ask, it's totally on us.
Good point.
It's much more trackable if we requested specified restricted line item in the budget as opposed to assuming that the funds are being allocated from an overall departmental budget.
And I would rather not wait another year.
Well, we've got a new police chief, so, it could be he's got so much going on that this little line item would escape him. And so I'm just saying that, maybe first place to do is to talk to him about it. I don't know, maybe you guys think we need to do more than that or less than that, but.
I like Janet's approach, and that is to make it clear that we would like to have this done, and a phone call then from our chair or somebody here in authority would say, please act. The only way to get a yes or no, as Paul says, but it's important to act on this now, I think.
I agree. We definitely need something on the record. I like your idea. Anybody prepared to, well, no.
Come back to your
Make a motion?
Pardon?
Come back to your motion.
Okay, I move that we have a line item in the budget for the next fiscal year for a part-time person to support this board employed as a staff member within the police department.
Who do we make the request to?
City manager.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Thank you, sir.
Motion approved.
So who does it?
Kevin.
Secretary.
Well, no. Staffer.
The way we did it in the past is when the board would pass a resolution, I would then send a memo to the city manager and to the chief or whoever it was designated, sometimes to the mayor and city council, saying that the board had passed this resolution. Then I just copy it and paste it into the email, and then they would all have it.
Nice.
So, Madam Secretary, you can take care of that, right?
Yeah, if somebody wrote down exactly what your motion is.
Well, I would say go back to the Jensen Hughes report and use that wording.
I would too.
That's what we're
Okay.
requesting.
6.6.
In accordance with,
Yes.
point whatever.
Come on,
That's not how that works.
come on.
That's not the original motion.
Yeah,
Motion,
You have to use the actual wording from your original motion.
Luckily, you guys are live streaming.
Yeah, so you'll just have to refer back to the video on YouTube to get the verbiage that Mr. Chappell used when he made the motion.
Well, somebody writes, these are tracked.
So when they do the notes, Zach watches the video.
Your minutes aren't approved until the next meeting.
yep.
So and this will be up as soon as we end. It'll be up on YouTube. So you can go to the video.
Yeah, no, that's, no. Okay. It's because I'm the secretary and because I'm a woman, I did not accept this to get into a clerical position.
That's
right?
not what anybody's implying. We didn't say the secretary should do it. The board said that.
Well, no, but, has anybody here in the history of this CRB been tasked with going to the video, finding it and writing down word for word something?
No, because Jade.
but when I was doing it,
He did.
I would make notes, and I would write out what the motion actually was.
Right.
And then I would,
And I'm happy to do that if somebody will tell me word for word what the motion was, because I did not take the notes. I was tasked with this after the fact.
I will pull them,
You'll pull what?
the word for word from that's what I'll do,
Right, from the
In the
video.
video?
from the video.
Well, somebody has it written down and they
No.
can't.
I do.
Okay.
Move to recommend to the city manager that there's a line item in the budget for a part-time position to support the board.
Oh, part-time?
That was what I heard.
That's
what it said.
that's what was said.
That's what he said.
And there's no reference to Jensen Hughes.
No, there was no reference regarding Tuesday.
how about this?
Have a friendly amendment.
In accordance with the recommendation of the Jensen Hughes report, the CRB requests that the city include within its budget sufficient funds to support a staff person to assist in the preparation of CRB materials,
Sufficient funds to
assist in the preparation of CRB materials and to respond to information requests. This period, this person to be funded within the police department's budget. Walt, was that your motion?
We need to amend the emotion.
Was that your motion?
Amend the emotion.
Thank you, Counselor.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have to make a new motion because the
I want
motion,
to get, is that good enough, Walt?
Just amend, but I would include,
well, you just have to make a new one because we already voted on the old
I
one.
understand.
Voted on the old one.
So you got to make a new motion.
no,
Yeah, well, first thing we have to do is find out if Walt's okay with the language, because it was
I'm
his
asking
motion.
that we have some reference that this employee be within the police department, so we don't have any questions about whether they have access to this data.
Well, that's what I was meaning by within the budget.
He said within the police department's
The
budget.
question, I understand the budget, but then make sure that employee is somebody who actually has access. Do you
just,
follow me?
We do, we
Yeah.
may be micromanaging now, but, all right.
Isn't that what we said? That's what you said, that this person?
That's what I thought I said, intended
Yeah.
to say.
The wording, I really think that the wording from the Jensen Hughes report is sufficient
Right.
to meet our needs. And it's very simple. Provide dedicated funding to support the mission and administrative needs of the CRB.
All right. That's good.
That keeps it simple and in line with the recommendation, and it'll make it very difficult for the powers that be to argue with it.
Okay, I think that's fine too. I'm just trying to clarify. So, Janet, would you like to move
Yes,
You make a
an
new motion.
amendment to the motion?
I make it,
can we practice it first? I mean, because, do we need to be a little more specific, you know, like, because what I have here is that to assist in CRB materials, maybe preparation of materials, and respond to information requests. But are we putting ourselves in a box? Should we have like policy research and communication?
I don't feel like we should tell staff and department heads.
No, this is a discussion, this is not a legal discussion. I'm not jumping in here. You want procedure, that's fine, but
Yeah, I don't want to get too specific because that's not our job. Our job is to recommend policies, not to tell department heads and staff how to run their business. That's just my opinion, and I'm probably jaded.
Well, you don't have to make it a motion. You can make it maybe a suggestion. That's not the word I'm looking for, but what did you say, Jay? You called it something else.
Right, I'm writing something out here.
So anyway.
In accordance with the Jensen Hughes recommendations, the CRB requests that the city include within the police department's budget sufficient funding to implement the staffing recommendations of that report. I guess, as to CRB functions. Maybe that'd be the way to say it, because there are more staffing recommendations in the CRB functions. In accordance with the Jensen Hughes recommendations, the CRB requests that the city include within the police department's budget funding to implement the staffing recommendations of that report as to CRB functions.
That's your motion?
That's my amendment to the motion, substitute motion.
No, because your motion's passed, so you can't do all that other.
So this is a new.
So it's a new motion.
We're gonna,
Okay.
So I think technically someone needs to make a motion to rescind the motion that was passed, and then you can have a new motion.
Yeah.
You are correct that you can't have a substitute motion for something that's already passed.
I make a motion that we rescind the motion that was passed a few minutes ago.
Second,
All those in favor?
aye.
This is fun.
Okay,
and Jay, I really like that. I would just I would ask that you specifically identify recommendation 6.6.
Thank you.
So that way there's no doubt what we're talking about.
In accordance with the Jensen Hughes recommendations, comma, specifically recommendation 6.6, comma, the CRB requests that the city include within the police department budget's funding to implement the staffing recommendations of that report. Period.
Can we state an employee of this police department in there? So we don't have any problem with these folks having access to the data.
Well, it's within the police department's budget, so
That means they could hire a civilian, right? It doesn't say.
well, they hire lots of civilians. That's the, I
think that's adequate.
I think it's.
Hey, it's good enough, yeah.
Is that official? I second that.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded.
Question.
Any question?
Could you read it one more time, please?
And you have it all written down?
Well, I do, but it's in my cryptic shorthand.
Oh,
In accordance with the Jensen Hughes recommendations, specifically recommendation, is it 6.6? 6.6, the CRB requests that the city include within the police department budget funding to implement the staffing recommendations of that report.
No more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passed. All right.
Anything else for me? Going back over there.
Appreciate it. All righty, let's move on to what's next. What do we have next here? Subcommittee?
Yes, so the subcommittee met last Thursday. We reviewed 3 cases, and there were no cases to bring forward to the general CRB meeting.
All right. Well, thank you. Discussion of the annual CRB report highlighting the board's activities and outcomes. And I believe, are you going to lead this discussion, Mr.?
Well, I can.
Okay.
I authored the only one that's ever been done.
I know, that's why I asked you. I knew that part, so that's why I was asking for your guidance.
And I'm neglect, I should have pulled a copy of it from my archives to bring it here, but I made the point last meeting that I thought it's incumbent upon us to tell the community exactly what has been accomplished by this board in the last 12 months or whatever time period we want to use for reporting purposes. It was a 2-page narrative, basically, with some statistical references to the policies that were reviewed and the number of cases that were reviewed, and then the recommendations that we brought forth. I mean, it's not that complicated of an annual report.
Is that online?
Probably it should be a part of one of the minutes of one of the meetings, yes, because it was entered into the records.
Okay.
I really don't recall what time period it covered.
It was more than a year ago.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, it was before I came on the board.
I'll be happy to pull together a draft. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make the August meeting. I have another commitment, but if that's what the board would like, I'll take the responsibility for doing that.
Well, sometimes we adjust meeting dates to accommodate, and that's why we're meeting today.
We need to not do that for individual board members. That's not protocol. We'd never meet on the same day if everybody did that.
We've adjusted in the past. I mean, you were always
Yeah.
good to ask.
We have, and we were more flexible early on, and then we kind of stuck with the Thursday meeting.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
my view was we could be flexible, but Janet's right. I mean, it's pretty easy to block out that one. I mean, not for everybody, but it's from, a regular schedule is better than an irregular one.
Everybody's going to miss once in a while.
I can submit it for the agenda, but I
Yeah.
should be here in person to
Sure.
comment on it.
I think it'd be great if you could share that.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good. So you're going to share that? I appreciate that. Mr. Paul Kitchen.
Well, everybody looked at the recommendation of the, can we call it a subcommittee that we met? There was a couple months ago, we met.
I don't think I have it with me.
It's the last page.
Oh, okay.
Plan. Written strategic plan.
I didn't know if anybody from the board here wants to add or change things here or take things out to this motion. This was, again, dealing with the Jensen Hughes report recommendation.
It would be a significant undertaking, so we need to be committed and serious about it if we're going to go forward, because we're asking a lot of other entities within the community to share with us their input and what they know and don't know about our operation. So it's not something we should approach lightly. But I can see justification for it because it gives us a longer range trajectory for what we hope to accomplish based on listening we do and the feedback we receive. But it's a complicated mechanism.
I mean, in outline, the proposition is a good one. The commitment that Denny references is significant. The 12 community listening meetings, 2 in each city council district. We may, if we start off on this project, we may discover that we don't have the volume of involvement from the community that would justify 12 separate meetings.
Yeah.
I mean, who's here today? I mean, we have historically had pretty small turnouts to meetings, and maybe we can evaluate why that is. But I would suggest that we would need to be flexible to adjust this, because if you outline 12 meetings and then another meeting with the PD, 4 separate meetings with the police department and all that, you probably got 20 meetings here set, which is a lot of time and effort.
Well, I don't know about anybody else on this board, but over the years, I've gone to quotes, and I was on the committee to help write this, so. But my only concern is I've gone to quotes a lot of listening meetings that have been put on by different entities for different reasons over the years. And for the most part, the attendance was not that good. Now, that doesn't mean the people that attending didn't get something out of it, and that doesn't mean it wasn't that it was not a good idea, but I'm just saying that we need to be prepared that, you're not going to get a room full of 500 people. You may be doing good if you get 20, and you'll be excited if you get 50. And, just getting people out to vote is the challenge of the day. Getting them to come to meetings where, what's the word I want? They're not impacted. They're not just going to a meeting. They need to be impacted by something that makes them want to come to that meeting. So I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying it's a bad idea or anything else. I'm just saying that we need to be prepared for a lot of work and few people.
Well, what my point is simply this, that if you adopt a plan that says we will have 12 community listening meetings, 2 in each city council district, and then we discover that that is not a useful exercise, we have now failed to comply with our adoption of the plan. And so
Right.
what I would suggest is that we say we will have a community listening meeting in each council district, but not committing to 12 separate meetings, or, to try to provide some flexibility in the process. So that if we get graded, not that anybody cares perhaps, but if we get graded with our compliance with our plan, we can demonstrate compliance with the plan. That's just a thought, make it an achievable objective is what I'm thinking.
Sum total of my experience with the DAB meetings is maybe 3 or 4 that I've attended. Is there anything in our expectations that we could accomplish by working within the DAB structure?
I've attended a couple of DAB meetings just to talk about the CRB
Yeah.
and let folks know that it's there. I think that's a great idea.
How was it received?
Well, we had an attendee in the last meeting because she heard about it.
Okay.
Yeah. So, there weren't a lot of questions. There wasn't a lot of engagement. And certainly, it was just my first 2, right? So I've learned from them to probably even do better. But I like the DAB idea.
Getting agenda time will probably be the biggest challenge because they have their regular business that they go through every month.
Well, and I think we're wanting to engage more people than who are usually engaged. And so that's why we were suggesting going to churches and hair salons and barber shops and so on, and that it's not requiring all of us to attend every meeting, right? That we should have at least one person from each district, and then each district could decide what's the best way to do this. That rather than, there may be a district that the DAB meeting would be great. There may be another district that says Sunday afternoon is a better time. We're going to get more engagement here if we do it here.
I like the idea of connecting with the community in a different way. I do. I really like that idea. I think that, we meet here at City Hall and at a certain time, and that limits people's ability to participate in what's going on. So I like that idea. I don't know what that looks like, though. You know what I'm saying? If we could decide what this could look like, how can we reach out and how can we connect in the community and say we want to hear your voice. It's more than just people people are not going to show up and say, well, maybe my voice doesn't matter. We want to hear the voices, and we got to be ready to hear what are we going to do with the stuff that we hear.
Yeah.
I think that gives us more social capital in the community also, just from being in the community that we're, assigned to serve.
Well, and then the 2 DAB meetings, and granted they were only 2, but they weren't well attended. Most of the people that were there were because they were on the agenda. So, and then I'm just concerned, because I don't know who will do the work, finding, making the appointments or, reserving the library, getting the word out. I don't know micro-influencers. And who do we have, particularly if we don't have this staff person to do all that work, because we hear so many times how there's just no time for folks that are assigned to this as it is.
Doing these community meetings is very work intensive, extremely work intensive. What if we invited people who have made complaints? What if we got a list of everybody that's made a complaint and reached out to those people with a list of questions and did that kind of a survey? Now, that's not going to expose us to people necessarily in the way that we would like to, but we might gather some good information on how we could improve. And a lot of the people that make the complaints never reach out to us. Very few do. But that would be our target audience, I think, because honestly, I don't know how we can make this work without the assistance of city staff on doing these community meetings. It's extremely work intensive. As somebody that's done them, I know.
Well, Kevin, you talked about, engaging the community. How do we engage the folks in near northeast Wichita? How do we engage them to come to these meetings?
I don't know. I was kind of piggybacking off of what Ricardo said when he said, I don't know what that looks like, but we can see what happens if we move it to a location in the neighborhood. And I'm not really thinking, what they call that place, the Atwater Center, is that what it's called now?
Yeah.
I'm not even thinking that. I'm thinking of something a little more relaxed, I guess. But I don't know what that looks like either. It'd be something we'd have to think about.
So do you have any kind of an estimate how many people showed up at the event that you had with your documentary?
Yeah, 257.
Wow.
With the what?
257.
We did an outdoor. We Ricardo and I, we directed a documentary, and we had an outdoor screening of it at Pyatt Park, and Mr. Kitchen came, but we had 257. Yeah.
And there was no RSVP. There was
So you had an interest, you had something to draw them. You have to have a reason, you have to have something that's
People
going to
will
be
come.
a draw to them.
Yep.
Well, and you did a lot of work promoting it.
Mostly social media. I was hoping for 100, expecting 80. I was shocked that we had close to 300 people, honestly. But we mostly use social media, but we did kind of ask some individuals for feedback because we wanted to know what attracted them, and there were a couple different answers. One was the content, obviously, because we did the film about the plane crash that crashed where the park sits there now, so we actually showed the plane. We showed the film where the crash took place, but other people were just talking about a sense of community. They said they felt a sense of community there. They felt like it was a calling for a sense of community. And so that piece, if we could tap into, obviously we're not going to show a movie about a plane crash, but if we can tap into that community piece some kind of way, I think that would be some equity there maybe.
It was in a public park. It wasn't at the library. It wasn't at City Hall.
Yeah. Grass wasn't cut.
No.
Nobody complained about it. At least not that I heard.
Well, go ahead, Paul.
I have a observation to make. I've been involved in this kind of thing for many years in different organizations, major universities, for example, different organizations, corporations. And it seems to me we have the cart before the horse. We first have to figure out what it is we want to achieve, what are our objectives, and then have a plan to get some feedback on whether or not we're meeting them. I haven't felt that we've had much of a discussion yet of what it is this board wants to accomplish. We have a few vague statements in the statutes and in the ordinance. The ordinance is tailored after the statutes. But the problem is that they're very broad. One is racial profiling, another is review of policy, another is community outreach. Well, those are all well and good. This is part of community outreach.
It is.
But it does not say how we stop racial profiling. It does not say how it is we have a policy review that's meaningful. So I have some specific recommendations I'd like to pass out, Mr. Chairman. As part of the discussion, we can have an opportunity to review it and think about it. Won't necessarily conclude it today, but I've spent a lot of time thinking about this over the last several months, and I'd like to share it if I don't mind. Would it be okay?
Yeah, you can pass that out. I don't know if we're going to get a chance to discuss it right now.
No, we're not going to probably get
Okay,
to all of it
okay.
today, but I think we'll have an opportunity to have at least some meat on the
Coming
table.
back to you.
And go ahead, I'm sorry.
Just one quick thing to correct there because of the editing that we did as a subcommittee. I did notice now that we cut it down to 3 questions and up above it says 4, so we would need to change that. But we had the 3 bold questions, and I think that goes to kind of what Walt is talking about, that us developing what we want to do, we've got 3 right here, is finding out from the citizens what's their vision of a successful citizens review board or review process of police actions, what presents the greatest challenges, and they may not know, right? But if we list those 6 things and maybe they have one suggestion, and how can the CRB best communicate with you? And I think that communicating with the public is something that all of us want to do.
But I think I kind of want to piggyback off of that. Communicating with the public, it builds trust. I mean, I think we all agree that there's some distrust. And I think it builds trust. And then I really like these first 2 of these 3 questions because it gives the public a little bit of ownership in what we decide our direction is. It gives them a little skin in the game, gives them a voice. So
Kevin, you've been like real, vocal about the reason why you wanted to be on here, right?
Right.
And it's frustrating because there's a sense that probably your experience could be repeated, but we don't know how to uncover it. So, I mean, what's going to motivate folks who had your experience to come forward?
I don't know, I'm kind of shocked that we don't get more racial profiling complaints, and I would like to know why. I know if this existed when I was a younger driver, I don't get pulled over at 54. At 24, I got pulled over all the time. If this was while I was 24, you'd be sick of me sitting here. That's how often I was harassed, for lack of a better word, because that's what it was. And so, I don't know, I like to think maybe in 30 years that the environment's different, but at the same time, I was born at night, but it wasn't last night, so I don't believe that to be the case. I don't know. I think we have more profiling going on than what we're getting reports on, and I wish I knew the answer to why that is.
So what this is, Mr. Chairman, is an opportunity to try to be more specific about what our objectives are. And to find out, for example, in the first item having to do with the police officers that are resigning, that's not the first item, it's the second one. The first one is to get some recognition to our officers that are doing a great job, be able to give them some attaboys and attagirls, be able to say, okay, Officer of the Month and then Officer of the Year. But number 2, having to find out why we have so many officers resigning and retiring early. I'm not sure what that's about, but we've asked for, some information about whether some exit reviews are being done, exit interviews. But I don't know if that's happening or not. But for some reason, there's a hole in the bottom of the bucket. We got officers leaving, not enough coming in, so that isn't working. And number 3 has to do with the external complaints and making sure we understand what it is that is actually happening. What are these people complaining about? As Kevin said to us just a minute ago, we've had a lot of racial profiling complaints, over 800. But in the recent years, so many of them never are sustained, and people say, why bother? Why even go in there and fill out a form? So I think we've got a problem. The data shows we're still twice as likely to be stopped if you're black, but those complaints aren't being sustained, and many times people don't even bother to go ahead and file something. Number 4 has to do with the invitation to make sure the person that filed the complaint is heard. We don't do that yet. We don't have that opportunity to actually hear from them in writing. We discussed it earlier about getting more into summaries, but Jensen Hughes, the 6.5, said specifically to get the written complaint, be able to read it and know what it was, what the person complained about, internal as well as external.
Well, Kenneth, I can tell you, this is detailed. It's very, very detailed. I just want to know, how does this align with what Mr. Kitchen was talking about, this right here, this strategic plan? I don't want to say here, this is not necessary.
Understand.
But I want to make sure that we are on task with where we are with this strategic plan. Where do we move?
This is after the fact. This is after you get some idea of what it is we want to accomplish. So this is why I say we've got the cart before the horse. If we're going to go out and try to meet with people, they don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're doing. But we do have, I think, after this discussion, a better idea of what it is we want to accomplish. Then we develop a plan for how we're going to get it done.
Okay.
But without some idea of agreement about our objectives, to fill in the blanks, we have to have something that has some meat on it. And I don't see that just having meetings is going to help us. So I offered for discussion. I may not have time for us to go in much detail today, but I really appreciate the fact you put this on the agenda.
Yeah, well, we'll come back to this, but thank you for this. I want to make sure that we close this piece out. Paul,
So-
tell me where you are.
So I guess the idea of, it could be that we're putting the cart before the horse, but I think that it is, that we're not, that by asking the community, we have the, whatever it was that set us up. What was that called? What's it? The ordinance, thank you. We have the ordinance that set us up. It's very, it's broad and vague in some places. And in those places, rather than having us as a group decide what that means, I was suggesting that we go to the public and ask them, how do you see us best fulfilling this as members of the community, rather than having us decide the best way to do it? And that we could come up with what our board is going to do based on what the public wants us to do, as opposed to us saying, this is what we want to do. What do you think? They're going to say, yeah, do it. Or no, don't do it. But I wanted to find out more from the public what they wanted from us before we decided on specific things that we should do.
Well, and does there, anybody else on the board have anything that they want to add to what we've done as a committee? Because this was just three of us, this was what we came up with first time around. That doesn't mean we can't go back in and make some changes.
Well, and I like Jay's suggestion of changing the meeting requirements and so on. We want to make sure that every area of the city has the opportunity to be represented. And the reason that we said more than one meeting was, just like we were talking about with us, that if the one time that we have it doesn't work for you and you're not able to make it, then you're out. So we could have a second one, I don't know, as an option maybe.
I think this is a good idea. I really do. But it goes back to, I think, the discussion we were talking about, who's going to be willing to do the work that's going to be required to begin to connect. And so all of these pieces fit together. Walt, you have your piece here. How do we connect with community? Yeah, we're from the community. All of us are from our part of the community, but how do we connect with not just our voices, but hearing the voices of the community? How can we do that?
We have to, I'm back to the impact, and, if it's not going to impact them, then a lot of times they have no interest. And so we have to show them that we're an important board and how we can impact them, what we can do for them. That would be one suggestion. I'm getting to an age where I'm a cynic, and so I try not to be that. But I just think we need to somehow or other, and one way might be to I don't know, some groups call it a speakers bureau, but to let some of these groups know that we're willing to come and speak about the CRB and what we do. And so you start with organizations in town, NAACP, League of Women Voters, some of these places that are looking for a program. We're it. And be willing to go out, talk about the CRB, let them know, and word of mouth will help, and maybe another group. So that's one way to get our name and ourself out there. But setting up all these meetings and all this is a lot of work.
I like the idea of community group outreach. So it wouldn't be the CRB as a whole meeting, but some people from the CRB would go out to meet with whatever group that, and you would have them invite you. I mean, you'd have to haggle the invite, but make it their presentation. And so that gets you into an informal dialogue.
Neighborhood night out's coming up.
Right, that's an example, right? I actually think that, for example, remember the community, I think they called it the Community Justice Forum or something, they had it up at the WSU Center, they had the
Metroplex?
Metroplex, and we had a table there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Sharon, you were there.
I was there, right.
And it was, we were only a very small part of that large event, but it was a large event with a good cross-section of folks there, and it was, I thought, worthwhile. We're never going to duplicate that again because that involved a whole lot more people than just us. But having some targeted group outreach to whatever it is that meets at McAdams Park or meets at Rockwood Library or whatever, and
On a random day, that's not just a regular day. It could be a Sunday evening, it could be a, whatever.
right, you're going to go to their schedule, not our schedule.
Right.
But that we're available to speak or have a table or whatever ways we would perceive it. And it wouldn't have to, as you say, I'm not saying all of us, I'm just saying those that are willing and have the schedule.
The legwork is figuring out where those are, when they are, and how to get invited.
The legwork is making up your list of your organizations and notifying them via letter, email, Facebook, whatever you decide, but to let them know we're here and we're willing to speak. And there's a lot of groups out there that are looking for programs, looking for somebody to talk to them, looking for people to table at some event they're having. And that's how you get it out there. I've been in the league for over 40 years, and we have found that that's one of the best ways, out of all the different things that we've come up with, that's a couple of the best ways to get your name out there and get people.
So I'd like to add, though, I mean, in theory, all these meetings sound really great, but we've got to commit to attend. We were invited to the Racial Profiling Advisory Board, right? And the participation from this board, I was disappointed, and it can't be the same people going to all the meetings, hearing the same thing, because then it becomes harder to disseminate the information, and you can create even factions within here, or is that really what they said? So, I mean, if we're going to do this, we must commit to participating.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would like to come back to the point that this is not a plan. This is a way to try to get some feedback about a plan. And what I'm very concerned about is until we get some idea what it is we're going to try to accomplish and how we're going to measure it, we don't really have any business going out to talk to anybody. I think they will be kind of wondering, what is it you guys up to? What do you want to accomplish?
They ask that question. They ask that question when they find out that you're on the board. I get it all the time. What are you doing? What's the purpose of the board? They ask those questions.
Yeah.
But it's the listening session. I mean, I love these questions. I like engaging folks. I kind of feel like we have to know what they want.
But are we open to hear what they want, though?
I would hope so, and I try. I mean, Walt has a list of items, most of which we've heard multiple times, some of which are good and some of which may be problematic. But we're the Citizens Review Board. So why wouldn't we, instead of telling them what we have on our agenda, why wouldn't we say, tell us what your concerns are? What do you think? Why are you worried about the police department if you are? Tell us. Not us tell them, you tell us. I think that is what you were intending to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good point.
And I think that going to these other organizations and groups could be one way, but there are so many people in our community who are not involved in anything, and their voice is not heard anywhere.
Great point.
And we need to, even if they can still choose to not come participate with us, but I want them to have the opportunity, and we want to be able to reach them. That's why we have these micro influences listed here as an example, to try to find what's going on and why are people concerned, or why are people not concerned? And then that third question, that follow-up of how can we best communicate with you? we wanted this to be a continued conversation. This is the beginning of a conversation for a lot of people, and we didn't want it to end with just the one meeting, the listening session. But I'm definitely willing to make changes and so on, and think of, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood what we were trying to, why we were doing it in this order.
We had an opportunity with the Racial Profiling Board to meet after a number of things have occurred here in the nation. We had brutal murder of a number of black citizens in various states. And we had over 100 people show up for a discussion of racial justice reform. And within an hour and a half, we came up with a series of very specific recommendations, but we provided them with 23 specific ideas. They rank ordered each one of those, and we came up with a normative group process that allowed us to rank order each of the ones and come up with a top priority. But it took a major trauma in our nation to get that number of people to show up. After Rodney King was beat up, Michael Brown, others in this country, we've been able to get 200 or 300 people, but most of the time we get maybe 20, 10 to show up.
But if we multiply that by the 12 meetings,
Pardon?
multiply that by 12 meetings.
No, what I'm saying is for them to come to a meeting that has very vague objectives and we don't get any way to actually measure what it is that they've said. Was this a representative sample or is this the 4 or 5 people that happen to show up? We don't have any way of knowing if these are priorities or not. Right. Until you get a good, clear idea what it is we want to accomplish and have some way to measure it, we don't have much that we're going to go out and benefit from holding all these meetings. And I can tell you it's going to take a hell of a lot of time to organize.
It will take a lot of time, and those cases of the traumatic events happening, that causes a response. That's a fire.
That's exactly what happened.
When a fire shows up, people show up to say, here, I want to do something about the fire. I think this is an indication that we need to start having conversations before the fire starts. Not just to say here, hey, we're going to get here and we're going to talk about everything that's wrong, everything that's wrong, everything that's wrong. We're going to talk about, let's have a conversation about community, about everything, whether it's community policing, whatever it may be, but having a conversation with the community.
Perhaps partnering with the Racial Profiling Advisory Board, because we've had, we had a workshop, I don't know, a month or two ago, and we have another one coming up. It's too soon, but next weekend, next Saturday, I don't remember now exactly what the topic is, but they have a pretty good track record of getting the word out, as long as we don't pick a weekend when there's something else going on. But that would just be, reaching out to them.
I like that idea of partnering, because we can't do this by ourselves. Mm-hmm. Some of us sit on several boards. We already do that. And so, okay, our foot is here, but being able to partner to say, okay, we're concerned about community, how can we partner in that? But I like the idea about these meetings. If we can go back to this at some point in time, I don't know how we do this. Can you look at this? Are you willing to look at this? And let's continue our discussion about this. Can we do that?
And maybe put some recommendations around how we would accomplish, these, who's going to do it? Who's going to make the appointments to reserve the space? Who will communicate with the micro-influencers and go to the hair salons? And that's where the Racial Profiling Advisory Board is pretty strong. I think they have folks that go out and do that.
Having organized these meetings for 25 years, I can tell you it takes a hell of a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And without Michael Brown, Cedric Lofton, my God, you don't get anybody.
No, you don't.
You get a few people, and then how representative is that? Yeah. What did you actually accomplish?
But going back to the whole thing in our purpose, as we talk about this, some of those things this is what we know about. We know about those situations. There have been other instances where things have happened we didn't know anything about. We know that. But they whisper and they talk about those things privately. But they're not coming out to meetings and they're not coming out saying, hey, I'm concerned about this, you know, because maybe afraid of retribution, whatever it may be, you know. So can we continue to look at this? I think it was a good discussion. I like this. I do. But how it's going to look different and everybody's not going to agree with it. I know that. But can we agree that we need to do something?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Good.
Okay.
Well done.
The mission will be figuring out how to execute.
How to execute it? Absolutely. How do we execute it? And yeah,
Good word.
yeah. How do we execute this? Good idea.
I just,
Come on.
I like these 3 questions. I think they lead us in the right direction.
Yep.
And then another thing, too, is maybe we haven't pinpointed precisely, but I think we have a general understanding of why we're here. I mean, and if it's not the same as what I think it is, feel free to correct me, but I think just creating better rapport, better relationships between the communities and police, I think that's the end goal. I mean, I think some of the other problems solve if that goal is accomplished. So I would think that would be the overarching goal if I had to guess, just really changing some of the perceptions. There are perceptions, I believe, that communities have of police that could be changed, and there are perceptions that police have of communities that could be changed as well, and kind of breaking those barriers and getting both sides to recognize the human in each side. I mean, there's still a job that the police have to do, and sometimes that job is not pleasant for the person that's on the receiving end of that job. But when both sides realize that there's a human element there, and that relationship improves, I think I would imagine that would be the overarching reason why we're here, to try to figure out how to create that type of rapport.
I agree.
Good point. Good point. All right, we're going to move to executive session. So I move that the Citizen Review Board recess into executive session for 30 minutes to review information relating to PSB cases 21 PSB 2678 and 22 PSB 4702 to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel, to protect the privacy and interests of an identifiable individual. The executive session will begin at 5:30? 5:29 p.m. and end at 5:59 p.m. The meeting will resume in this room.
Need a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
announcement with regard to this case and then reconvene in executive
I
session.
guess I can read my writing.
You can open the door, I don't think anybody's here, but,
You're live, though.
okay, all right.
The motion.
So we're back on the record, and you just need a motion to extend the executive session, however long you want to extend the executive session.
Does he make the motion or he needs to?
He can make, yes, he can make the motion.
We're back in regular session now?
Yes.
Okay. So I move that the Citizen Review Board recess into executive session for an additional 30 minutes.
I would say to return no later than 6:30. That way, if we're done before, then we can come back.
To return no later than 6:30 to review cases 21 PSB 267A and 22 PSB 4702. To discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel. Protect the executive session is required to protect the privacy interests of an identifiable individual. Is there a motion?
Second.
Okay. Okay, so we,
Open the door first.
okay, all right.
Thanks.
We're live, and I'll check to make sure nobody's here. Good to go.
Good.
Yep, we're good.
We have returned from executive session.
Welcome. No action was taken.
Well, there was action.
No,
Well, not on this one.
You haven't voted on that action yet. You talked about it, but you haven't voted, because you can't vote in the executive session.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay, no action was taken.
and now you can entertain a discussion and/or motion.
Okay, is there a motion to continue this case?
I move that the board continue the review of case number 21 PSB 2678 for the purposes of receiving additional information and continuing our evaluation of that particular matter.
Second?
Second.
All those approved?
Was there
Aye.
a discussion?
Do you want to discuss it?
Yeah, could you be more specific? Did you ask the chief or who to come give us more input?
I move that the board continue the review of this case number for the purpose of receiving additional information. I did not specify that the chief appear.
Well, how will we receive more information? It needs to be more specific, I think.
What more information do we want? We need more information, and that's what the
Well,
motion.
like, how do they clear crowds after closing at Old Town, for example? How do they de-escalate situations? So we don't have this kind of thing happening over and over.
The motion I was making was specific to this case. The board, in my view, could have a separate dialogue arising out of that additional information to talk about policy recommendations related to Old Town.
Right.
But
It needs to be with the chief, doesn't it? Somebody specifically, how are we going to get any feedback? With your motion, it's pretty broad.
it is broad. It was intended to be broad because that way we could have a dialogue with perhaps the officer or the captain that was involved in the investigation and the report that would be meaningful. I'm not intending to hamstring the department by requiring a specific individual. They need to come to us in terms of my motion. I think the department will exercise a good faith effort to respond to that motion, and that's why I made the motion in that manner.
Well, the way it was written up was not acceptable. That did not comply with what the video showed. So we need to get more specific answers about how to de-escalate these situations so they don't happen again.
Walt, you can vote against the motion.
Okay? Can we make the motion more clear? Can I have some help with my colleagues in how we might word that? Because we all had concerns, so how do we express those concerns in a more specific way?
I understood that because we had time constraints, that's why we went ahead and tabled it and asked for more information. So maybe when we have more information, then we can be a little more specific.
Information from whom?
When they bring it to
The
the next
department.
meeting, the department. I trust Easter will bring the right people or the right data.
Well, it can't be the two officers that are here because they weren't at the scene. So if we're going to discuss it, we need folks that will explain why we didn't have Axon cameras going, one, and what the behavior of these officers were and how that's acceptable. Because that just precipitates a lot of distrust.
Challenging area as far as discussion of executive session materials, personally.
Before we make judgments as to conduct, I mean, the board did have concern, but before we make judgments as to conduct, we should gather more information. And what we are asking in my motion is for the department to come with more information. And that will allow us to further vet those issues and make a better judgment or recommendation. That's the gist of what I was suggesting we do.
Second. Oh,
All those approved?
Aye.
aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Opposition? Motion approved.
New business.
Any new business?
I happen to have some items.
For you.
Huh?
I just have a reminder for you.
Okay.
The next Citizens Police Academy class starts August 22nd. Some of you have not been. That's on a Tuesday night. And the other thing is, if you want to have someone from your group be present or do a presentation for the Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association, I can arrange that as far as reaching out to the community.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Maybe more than one person, right? I mean, multiple of us
If
could?
you want to, I
And
can.
do you have the graduation night? It's probably already scheduled, right?
We can do it on a special night that they meet.
Oh, I see what you're
once a
saying.
month.
Yeah, okay.
You can speak on that.
Was the invitation to speak to the Alumni Association or to the Academy?
The Alumni Association. That'll help get the community as you.
That's a good idea.
Under new business, Mr. Chair, how do you want to take ideas for agenda items?
In the past, how did we take ideas for new business items?
We discussed them during the meetings or people ask. The board can set the agenda item by a vote, or more often than not, it's just by somewhat consensus. Obviously, as you know, from your brief experience now, you kind of move agenda items around because of various issues. But I think board members make a specific suggestion, and then the board decides, or you decide as chair, how to handle scheduling.
Got an idea for something that you want to get?
Yeah, I would like to have more discussion about the actual achievable objectives and how we'll measure them.
This is what you submitted to us earlier?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, you had new business. Carla?
Yeah, and maybe it's a future agenda item for future discussion, but in the past, we have had discussion about how can we be in executive session to discuss cases that we have reviewed, or discuss a case that we've reviewed, but not have WPD personnel in the room, right? And or we've had some folks who have made complaints, and then when they're in here, they are very intimidated and fear retribution because WPD or personnel are in when we interview them about their case. And I think that's a detriment to getting all the information that we need. So I don't know, if my recollection is correct, maybe legal was supposed to check into that and get back with us on how we can accomplish that following our rules, being compliant. So maybe it can be, I don't know, is that an appropriate agenda item to discuss it in an open meeting? I mean.
Well, the procedure has to be in an open meeting.
Yeah, okay.
It would have to be an open meeting, but I would like to know from legal what, you know what I'm saying, what was decided about that. And so before we
Yeah.
could add that to your
Right,
agenda,
right.
we need to get information about that.
How it can be accomplished.
How it can be
Okay.
accomplished.
It's already in the ordinance that we have the opportunity to have the complainant at the meeting of the executive session. It's in the ordinance.
Right, but that wasn't her discussion. She didn't say that about the person being present. She said that about
WPD personnel being
Right.
present.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what she said.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Do we need to do we have cases for the subcommittee meeting in August? And then on that topic, do we, as a board, want the ongoing list of all of the cases we've picked? Because I get real uncomfortable. They're in a kind of a black hole. So perhaps they can just be, put on the agendas and brought forward. Because we've picked a lot.
For that.
Yeah, because, Because I think last time, or did I read that we're about 10 cases behind or something?
It's about 8
And
or
I
9,
don't-
I know.
Yeah, and I don't want to see them fall off, but how do we need a better tracking mechanism, a more transparent tracking mechanism than just something that Easter has.
I'll talk with Easter about that. Any suggestions about that, about how we track the cases? I mean,
I think that there is a list. I know that I had one at one point. I know Captain Easter has tried to keep a better list. I think that you just have a schedule that you attach where you add cases as they're being called, and you cross off cases as they get reviewed.
Right.
So you just have, and you can attach it to the minutes or back of an agenda or whatever, so that when we call a new case, it goes on the list, and it remains on the list until it gets crossed off.
Yeah.
And that would also make it then easier to identify the subcommittee cases,
Right,
because
that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we,
Yeah, because we have a meeting coming up in August.
Right.
What,
the way
Thursday?
Captain Easter and I have done those subcommittees is typically they're not use of force cases. They can be, but typically they're not. And they're not citizen requested reviews, because we do those with everybody. So then there are cases that I would call more procedural kinds of cases or complaints. If they've been called, Captain Easter and I would put those on that list because they were more manageable and less likely to be called for a complete review. So he and I just did that sometimes, just because that was the easiest way to get it done.
good idea.
Yeah, yeah. But do you have what you need to pick the cases? Or
No,
I guess you
don't.
will.
I don't.
I guess you will
I
before
will, yeah. I will
August,
have-
okay.
yeah, I will have that.
All right, and then I haven't seen anything come up, and we've had discussions about reviewing departmental policies, and the chief has promised us policies we can look at, and a new policy he was developing, and I can't even remember what it is, but I feel like the policy stuff has kind of gone into a black hole as well.
My suggestion would be that if you have a specific policy that you want us to review, that you put a specific policy on the agenda.
Well,
I think that's the easiest way to get through reviewing the policy.
yeah, but some of them are up for renewal, and so it seems a little more efficient if we can review ones that are up for renewal, or at least see the list, right? From time to time, we would get a list, or a couple times. But, I mean, because if we review something now, and we have recommendations or changes, then, but it's not scheduled to renew for 6 months or a year, then isn't that just a waste of time?
So are you requesting a list of the cases that are set to be reviewed?
Policies,
Sorry, policies that
Yeah.
are set to be reviewed like this month? So like you would want,
We'd want it a couple months in advance.
Yeah.
But we have our input before they actually meet.
Right. We have in the past that Captain Nicholson and then Captain Easter both would send out lists, and I would circulate them of pending policies. I would suggest to the board that it is not really, looking at the policy that up for renewal is not necessarily the best sorting mechanism. What the best sorting mechanism is, identify a policy that is of concern to the board or the public. For example, one agenda item that's been deferred now several times is the off-duty work policy.
right, there you go, that's one.
And so if the department has internally reviewed a policy and reaffirmed it or whatever, that's not really relevant to us deciding to review it. We can decide to review it. And so I would suggest that our review process be, well, we could look at those and as a way to identify what's being considered, really ought to be focused on what needs to be reviewed, what the substance of the policy rather than the timing. That's my thought process.
Well, I've identified in this working paper, Mr. Chairman, at least 4 policies specifically, 7, 8, 9, and 10 on the second page. So as we have an opportunity to discuss these, we'll have a chance to look at those policies regarding promotion, use of force, that kind of thing.
Well, Jay, help me understand this. So it's something that we care about and we want to look at, but if it's not up for review at the departmental level, then, I mean, that could be, what are they reviewed, every 2 years?
It depends.
Depends on the policy.
Okay.
Different policies have different review periods. But just because a policy has a set review, like, month, doesn't mean that it can't be, an update can't be made.
Oh, okay, all right, that helps.
My point is
That's not
that
the only time that we.
Okay,
that's an internal WPD deal. Our policy review should not be timed to theirs.
Right, right,
I mean,
okay.
if we have, an example, we reviewed the use of force policy, an example, we used the traffic pursuit policy. We did that one at least twice, and they were driven by events
Right.
as opposed to the timing of the schedule.
yeah, okay. Yeah, then I agree.
Another option for discussion, we have now in April, May, June, and now July, asked for feedback on what's going to be done to stop the disproportionate enforcement of traffic laws, specifically for racial profiling. And would you be able to contact the chief and ask him to either come himself or have an appointed person follow up on that? What are we going to do about it? How are we going to stop it? Right, Kevin?
I zoned out. I have no idea what you said. Y'all lost me about 4 minutes ago.
All of the new business.
There you go, man.
Is there?
Motion to adjourn? So moved.
Second,
All in favor? Aye.
good meeting.
We're out.